Well, hello gardeners, welcome back. Today we're in Fort Pierce, Florida, Zone 10A, and I cannot wait to share this beautiful garden of tried and true Florida plants and trees that are just not only stunning, but are tough and can handle our environment. So we're gonna talk about the individual plants and trees. We're gonna talk about the combination of how things come together. And that way, if you guys are looking to create something like this into your own space, you're gonna have a great shopping list of really nice plant material to really work with in your own particular space. We were here about 8-9 months ago, a few months after the original planting, and now we're about a year in from planting, so you guys get to see what this has transformed into a year later. Now, we've had some storm damage. Those of you guys who are from our area know that we had those 2 hurricanes that came through and all that happened right after installation, unfortunately. So there's some tree damage that got hit, but overall things have come out beautifully and are in full recovery. So yeah, let's kind of jump right into this garden, and I cannot wait to share these things with you. Just before we get started, you guys, if this is your kind of vibe, if this is what you like to see, then like and subscribe, hit that notification bell. We post every single weekend and we will show up in your feed if you do that. For those of you guys who are new to my channel, I am a landscape designer of over 25 years. These are the kind of projects that we do. We create backyard resorts for clients. We, redefine the front yard gardening. We really enjoy being out into the landscapes every single day. We have our personal in-house installation team that we work with. We also have design-only services for all of you all outside that service area, as well as virtual consults for you guys way outside that service area. Contact us if that's something you're looking for. But for right now, let's jump right into this video. All right, you guys, so just giving you a point of reference as my clients are entering their backyard space, we redefined this section with a nice brand new walkway. So this is a lovely walkway leading into the garden area, which I just takes my breath away every time I see it. I absolutely just love coming around this corner as I check into Kirby and Kathy's garden. About 8 or 9 months ago, it was pretty well established by that point, but now a year in, you can really see the layers really come together, how everything is just kind of giving you that bright pop of color, the brights and the darks mixed in. So for those of you guys who have shade plant or shade areas, this is a nice collection of shade plant groupings. So as you can see, they had an existing bottle brush tree. This is a weeping bottle brush. These guys get nice and broad and big. They've lost a couple trunks over the years, but overall it offers a good bit of protection on this side of the property. And the plant groupings allowed us to get completely different than the mid-sun, mid-central area of the garden. So I love these. We have flanked the 2 corner sections with ground orchids. I just love the way they look. They bloom in the winter, they bloom in the summer. Nobody tells them when to bloom. They just bloom when they want to. So I think they're absolutely stunning in this little pocket here. And then right to the rear section here, we have the dwarf alocasias, and they're almost, I would say, full grown at this point, and really just kind of offering that big pop of just that big giant leaf. So they're going to be a gorgeous 4-foot specimen as the midpoint here. And then right to the back are our Java whites. Now look at the leaf, Bryce. Look at the leaf, you guys, on these here. I just love how every leaf is a little bit different. It is just so fun. It's the size of my hand, or bigger, actually bigger. Just so gorgeous. Some people nickname these guys a spotlight plant because in a dark area, because they can handle such shady conditions, they are like a bright white spotlight in a space. Those of you guys who are looking for some moon garden plants, I know when they're newly planted, you don't kind of pick up on how bright this leaf is because it takes time for it to really flush out and grow in, approximately a year, as you can see. But it is the perfect brightness in a dark spot. So don't be afraid to use it. There is a little bit of a yellow tone, but definitely some white tones in it too. There is a neighboring house here, so we're gonna let these guys get about 5-6 foot tall over top of this wall. So this will be a big backdrop, then it tears down to the 4 foot of the dwarf alocasias, and then down to the 1.5 foot of the ground orchids. And then we popped right in the middle, because this is facing their seeding section, a little clustering of Rojo Congos. Some people are scared to put this big leaf against this big leaf, but you guys, because the contrast in leaf color, I think it's a gorgeous look. And they're never gonna compete with the height of these guys. These guys are always gonna stay in that middle range of 3 foot. These guys will get 4.5 foot to the middle, and then about 5 to 6 foot to the back. So you can see that natural layering. And then of course, the lower ground cover of the ground orchids here. Now right to the front, we have just a little dollop, just a little swath of the burl marks because, you know, I love how they just mound over into a bed. To me, they're a tropical hedge. They really do a good job of keeping a nice divided line. They grow into about 2.5 foot. That's their ideal size. You can keep them shorter if you like, but that's a perfect size to keep them. And they kind of make a nice tropical hedge with these guys. They kind of hold all the crazy to the back, and they're a little crazy themselves, so they're not too formal fitting, but they can handle sun, they can handle shade. They do need protection from the late afternoon sun. That's the only time that it can get a little bit burnt, but overall they can handle quite a bit of sun cover. So they're always gonna be something you wanna put towards the edge of the bed because most of the time that's where the sun hits the most. So, so they're a perfect little lower ground cover for that. All right, so you guys can see how we finished off. We kind of started wrapping the bed around. You'll notice from a lot of my landscape designs, if at all possible, I try to take and go to the extent of the property line and work my way forward from there, leaving as much grass space as we can between that and the next plant grouping, just because it makes the yard feel bigger. The last thing I want to do is kind of create, you know, a wall structure around your space that's just too heavy. I didn't want them to lose the size of this backyard. I wanted it to always be grand. But believe it or not, kind of bringing in some soft walls on the outside where it's just more of a soft plant grouping does a great job of still feeling like everything is just nice and big. You can see we took out about 8 or 9 foot of bed space, but we didn't come into all of this open grass space. They really have plenty of yard to work with here. And it's kind of that way all the way around. And then we decided to do a humdinger and bring out a middle section right out of their main doorway area so they can see the gorgeous garden right from the inside of their house, and kind of put a divider right in the middle with some beautiful plant islands just around that new pergola, just to kind of create an outdoor seating section. So that's what I love about this garden. I love that we were able to do that. And I know not all of us have the benefit of having a good sized backyard space, but when I get that, creative juices start getting going because I'm like, okay, we could do this and we could do that and still leave enough room for yard and grass. And that was kind of the goal here. So you guys will have to let me know if you think that we made that happen. On this side, again, we had the Java Whites, the big leaf color here. Now, what I find so fascinated about this plant is its versatility. We are now in full sun over here, where on the other side where those copper leaves were was pretty much shade with a little filtered light coming through. This is a heavier sun base. Now, this plant is doing just fine in that same particular spot. Maybe has a little bit more brightness to the leaf, more of the yellow tones you're gonna see when it has full sun versus the shady areas where you get more shade. And then as a backdrop, we chose the Louisiana red copper leaves because when you've got sun, you guys, and you love variegated leaf, these Louisiana reds do a beautiful job of offering you a hot pink burgundy kind of variegation in a big giant leaf. I mean, look at that leaf grouping right there where that sun hits, Bryce. You just see it's just a super happy plant. Now, the negative to those plants would be that the bottom 2 foot are usually pretty bare. All of their energy, the front and the back and the top of the planting. So the top 4 feet or 5 feet of this plant is absolutely stunning, but you do need a skirt planting to kind of cover up that lower section that, you know, may not be so appealing. So these guys are going to do a great job of that. At 5 feet, this is a particular spot. They did want to have some privacy since the neighbor's patio section is over in that area. So having a nice colorful wall here of these about 8 or 9 foot is going to be gorgeous. So they're doing just that job right there. So you guys will have to let me know what your thoughts are on it. Over here, this was an existing landscape right here. This was one thing that was here. This is a watermelon pink crepe myrtle. They had some lovely plumbago here. So we kept it. It looked great. We worked with it within the garden. All we did was take the 2 side sections and incorporate it into this island. So we have a full wraparound island along the wall here. In this little section here, we have a king sago. This is kind of our anchor point. This is kind of where we want the bed to start now to drop down before it goes back up. When you're looking at your space, pay attention to that because I think that's what makes the landscaping look really interesting. If you can have a lot of layered heights, then it drops down into something very easy to work with, more of a hedge planting. Then now you get into some more dynamic things like false agaves, king sagos, things that are more structurally vertical. And then it gets into a more of a jungle vibe. Again, over here, it's like a rinse and repeat of what we have over on one side. That's what makes makes it look like it has rhythm in the garden. We kind of created a little bit of a break here with some lower material. Then you come back in to a similar palette as we had over there. We've got the Java Whites, we've got the red Louisiana red copperleaf to the back, and that's really kind of giving us more of that wild, fun look to the front. Now, unfortunately, this and the other Christmas palm were damaged in the storm, and they're just flushing out with new growth this summer. So I'm gonna have to give them some time to offer a little bit of height in this particular spot. But once they do, that'll finish off this corner bed. Antilus are starting to catch up. We're gonna let them get about 3 foot taller and fill in this whole back section. So we kind of mimic what we've done with the Louisiana red copperleaves, but the Antilus are gonna offer a nice clustering of a different kind of burgundy coloring, but still tying together with our same palette. All right, you guys, so now this is where the bed changed. So we could have continued to swap and left grass all in this middle area, but my clients were just like me. You know, they wanted something from their outdoor seating section and from the inside of their house where their doorway is to kind of see looking out, something that was gonna draw them outside. And that's exactly what my garden does for me. And if you guys are that same way where you're like, you know, I spend a lot of time indoors or back on my back patio, but there's nothing that brings me out to make my garden usable. I spoke to my clients and we talked about, hey, would you want a pergola out here? Would you want, you know, a fire pit? Would you want water? What are your thoughts? And it was yes, yes, and yes. So I'm like, okay, so let's do it all. So we created a new paver walkway leading out into the middle of the garden. So their paver walkway goes pretty much from the gate that we just came in to the corner of the other gate, coming to their backyard section, and then opens up to the center walkway. And flow is so important, you guys. Being able to have a continuous flow of pavers or a walkway path or whatever leading to that area. So it looks like it has real purpose. Then we found a finishing point. So we needed something, if we're gonna have something in the middle of the yard, to have something with some anchoring. It doesn't have to be a pergola, you guys, if that's not in your budget, but it could be a water feature. It could be a shade sail. Those are relatively inexpensive and offer a big area to really gather underneath. It could be anything that kind of makes you want to go out there and sit in it. It could be a big shade tree with a bench and a little bubbling water feature. Just something that's going to draw you out into the garden that you might want to take a phone call, walk outside, sit in that spot for a few minutes, or when you're doing your gardening, sit there after you're done pulling weeds and trimming and whatnot, just a little spot in your space that kind of takes you into the garden. And that's exactly what this area has become for Kathy and Kirby. What I chose to do in this area was find an entry point. Because we have grass on this side and we have grass on that side, we needed an area for the mower to run straight across the paver patio. So I could not do like a little collection here and a little collection here like I like to do on either side of the walkway. So if you have that same situation, you need to have access leading from one spot to the other. Just take that same planting bed and stagger it. So take it, instead of it being right across from each other at your entranceway, stagger it forward, one pushed back, one pulled forward, and that's exactly what we have here. And it kind of really gives it an interesting look. And if you're not a matchy-matchy person, that really fits in with your style. So it definitely does here. So we have 2 king sagos, and anytime I have king sagos, I want a small plant grouping next to it. You almost want like a swath of one low ground cover mixed with another low ground cover. Now this is Golden Dew or Gold Mound. This is a nice collection of those, just kind of wrapping the front of it. And when I use Gold Mound, I love the idea of using Little Rubies. I think Little Rubies do a great job, a great collection of really contrasting in color. And that goes for any of your ground covers that you guys choose. Do a light and a dark, and then have something kind of a thriller coming out of the middle of those things. And you guys will notice in this particular bed, we didn't need much. So when I say a swath, you only need a little collection. So we've got 4 Gold Mound in this area. You guys know how I love to stagger my Gold Mound or stagger anything that I put in. So one's pulled forward, one's pulled back, one's pulled at an angle, and one's in the middle. So we kind of have a nice curvature of Gold Mound across this front. And the same thing with the Little Rubies. I never put them in a straight pattern. Look at this collection of thickness right here. This is from that staggered pattern. They grow together and connect really, really well. If you stagger a zigzag pattern, it takes you from a narrow swath to a nice wide swath, a nice wide area for them to collect. It makes them stronger, makes them grow in faster, braid at the top and braid at the bottom, and that really helps with weed prevention. So don't be afraid to do a nice thick staggering of these guys in place. The same thing with this. You'll see that we continued on with the swath of the gold mound to the front of that king sago there. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it looks like, in that area. And again, it's just a staggered formation around the king sago, just to continue that type of look. I wanted everything from when you're seeing from the seating section, low, 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 big, big, big. So everything kind of goes low, low, low. Then you get to the mammy crotons, which are the secondary larger grouping. Then you get to the larger variety of crotons as the backdrop, and then you get to your trees and your larger accents like the antilus here. That is your big backdrop. So as you guys can see, the pygmy date palms back here, they have not grown in yet. They're going to take a couple years to really become that wall that they need to come in, but they are starting to do just that. There is a big house to the rear side of this property line, and the goal is for these pygmy date palms, when they reach that 10 to 12 foot height, the trunks will be covered by all this lush plant material, but the canopies will be what's covering the house from view, which is, you know, my golden rule when it comes to palm trees. That's what I love about pygmy date palms, is they offer you a very lacy kind of hedge, for instance, you know, with a very, very little maintenance of just having to trim them a couple times a year. Whatever your viewing point is, whether it's from the backside looking forward, in this particular case, the viewing point is the doorway, is that big table, their seating section, their patio area. You want that to be super inviting from that spot leading all the way to the backside of the property. So in doing so, you want to make sure that you have low material in spaces. Then you have some accents popping out of that low material, so it makes it interesting. So the accents in this particular spot are the king sagos, are the false agaves, are the foxtail ferns even. I mean, look at these guys. I love this texture. I mean, this is a low plant with a lot of oomph, you know? So I know a lot of people do mass plantings of these. I tend to like them like this, where I have just like a collection of 4 of them in a staggered grouping at just an entry point or an ending point or at the edge of a bed, because they just do a nice job of kind of really changing the feel, the texture of the rest of the landscaping, because those leaves are so different than almost any other leaf that you can have in the gardens. And they're so low maintenance. I mean, you just kind of trim anything unwanted. You pretty much just hold this guy up. Anything at the bottom here, you just nip and trim. So super, super easy to do. And because they don't grow too tall, they really stay a nice kind of controlled planting right by an entrance space without getting out of, you know, out of control. Good. Use everything that is yours, everything that is within your space. If you can make your whole surroundings beautiful, like a resort does, they make sure that there's pathways leading to this little nook and that little nook and this interesting space and that interesting space. And I love bringing that to individual homes. That's how I live at my own home. And to me, I think that's how everybody would want to live. But that's what I love about having these conversations with my clients. So that's what we did here. We created something out in this space to enjoy, to draw them out. So they're still looking for the perfect furniture here, a fire pit and some outdoor seating in this section, potentially some hanging swings out here, and then some outdoor lighting, and voila, they are finished off with this gorgeous space. This is pretty much centered in the middle of their yard, so it kind of operates as a nice bit of division in this whole backyard space. So we've got the pygmy date palms that are eventually going to block out the house behind it. Then we've got pops of things like the antilus. You guys know I love my antilus because of what they do. They're going to collect together. These unfortunately are still leaning a little bit from the storm. They're going to collect together. Now on antilus, you guys, you can absolutely trim the tallest stalk. So whenever this stalk gets to be too tall for you, trim that tallest stalk and see those bare spots in between. Put that antilu head right into that bare spot, and then you've got a whole field of antilus. Before you know it, every single year when you do that once a year, you're gonna have plants to give to neighbors and friends and family, because you can literally farm with antilus. That's what's so wonderful about them. So it's pretty much free plants every time you trim, and they're perfect for cutting. So those of you guys who love your cutting gardens, take those guys out, put them in a vase. They will last forever. They will root in there. Then you can take that plant and put it into the garden 2 months later, and then have a brand new plant in your garden while you enjoyed it inside the house. So anyway, that was my plug for antilus. Sorry, a little long-winded there. And then we have a nice grouping of pie crust crotons, like a little bit of darkness, because I really wanted the light and the dark to really contrast here. So we have the pie crust crotons as a dark tone. They're just coming in for the season. You can see that spring coloring coming through finally on those guys. There is a lot of love-hate with variegated arbicola. Now, I do know this plant is common. It is used in builder's packages. There's no secret about this plant. It gets used pretty often, and it's also one of those plants that are easily neglected because everybody thinks you don't have to do anything to it. It's one of those plants that's so hardy it can withstand any kind of conditions. Not the case. A little love, little care. It is a great, ideal, low maintenance plant. Even with the little care, it's still a very low maintenance plant. So if you have a spot in your garden and you don't absolutely hate this light and green leaf, you're going to have enough interesting characters in the garden that this is almost like a supporting cast member. The one that's like, I don't have to fuss with you a whole lot, so I'm going to put you in like a little swath of that in because I need a light coloration, and I've already done a lot of other of those plants that are light coloration. So this gives you a nice variegated pop of brightness with a very little amount of effort. I don't use a ton of them. I try not to use giant swaths of them, but I do try to use them in key areas, and they work really well for that. So don't sleep on these guys because they are tough. They can handle high pH, low pH, draining soil, non-draining soil. So if you've got a pocket of an area that is a really tough place to find plant material to really thrive in and do well in, variegated arbicola, it should be on the list. So, and I needed a real controlled plant. You'll notice that along the patio and walkway sections, I always use controlled plants. Nothing that's going to get too hairy-carry. There are no Java whites here. You notice, nothing that's going to get too bold, too big in this particular spot. It is going from the ground cover to the vertical plants of the foxtail ferns, to mammy crotons, to dwarf ixoras, to variegated arbicola. And then the crazy is in the back, you guys. That's how it works. Make sure that everything around your area is pristine, clean. Then bring your texture, your funness, your craziness, and work it into the outside of those areas. You're never competing and you're never fighting through the jungle as you're getting through, as you're trying to walk through your walkways. That seems to really work for me in my designs. But, to each his own. That's just my style. We have an anchored Christmas palm here. And then, of course, like I mentioned before, some very controlled plants like the mammy crotons around the base of the Christmas palm. But to give this area a little oomph, because we have the water feature on the opposite side of them, I wanted something with some weight over here. So we have a trio of false agaves, you guys. False agaves are my go-to plant. I love the architecture they create in a garden. They're like the sculpture in the garden. I just love what they offer in a space, and it's like a little pow feature in a garden, especially when you have low material all the way around them. I think they do a fabulous job of that. Whatever you have, if you have a bird feeder in your house, or in your backyard area, if you have anything with any weight, a bird bath, a fountain, a swing in one area, whatever it is, you want to make sure that you balance that on the opposite side with something equally heavy. So on this side, we have this gorgeous bubbling water feature. I love the basalt columns bubbling feature. You guys probably might remember that from my own yard. I just love the way it looks. It offers light at night. It offers just a really cool little rustic charm in the garden. And it's not like I'm a dramatic traditional fountain, but it fits into me with the tropical landscape really well. I love the verticalness to it, and I think it's just a fantastic feature. It bubbles up, disappears into the rocks. There's a big basin down below that's about a 50-gallon basin, holds that water down below so you're not fighting the algae. Every time the irrigation comes on, it tops off a little bit of water because there's so much wind and obviously heat, some absorption that happens. That way they don't have to come out here and constantly add water every single week. Just an easy care type of fountain work. But you guys, that's what I love about these particular kind of fountains. I just think that they're low maintenance, they're easy to install and incorporate into a garden bed, but you definitely, if you're gonna bring something like that into your garden, balance out the opposite side with something like the blue agaves, the false agaves, the king sagos, whatever else that you need on that opposite side to give you some balance there. So let's move on to the rest of the garden. All right, guys, so when you can see that we're now on the opposite side of the pergola here, and now you can see a little bit more of what I was talking about with these cool false agaves. We've tiered down with the Bloom My Minds just at the bottom there, and you can see I've just staggered them. You do not need a ton of plants here. There's 3 Bloom My Minds here, and there's just a staggered grouping of Bloom My Minds here. You're just working with the bed that you have to work with. I plant my Bloom My Minds no closer than 2.5 foot on center. Really give them some space to fill out and become their gorgeous selves. themselves. And the same way with plants. In general, if it's an upright plant like this dwarf ixora, I'm gonna plant this a little bit closer because its natural way to grow is like this, so it'll take forever for them to connect. So I do kind of stagger them in close together, and I believe we've got like 7 of them in this grouping, and that's kind of how I like to do it. So we've got 7 here and 7 over on that side, and then I've just got a nice little staggered grouping till we start to get into the bigger material back here. It's the same rinse and repeat as I mentioned over into that side, you know, where we have a little bit of crazy, a little bit of controlled, and then now we're gonna get back into the little crazy again. So we've got the backdrop of these pygmy date palms, again, to help, you know, soften the wall line that are here. You can see we've got them staggered. So we've got the one pulled forward and then one pushed back by the wall. One pushed back by the wall here, one pulled forward. We've got them one pushed back further back here, and then over on that side, we have it pushed back by the wall. So you can kind of see the forward and backward motion. Now, if you guys have the room to stagger the pygmies like that, they grow in beautifully together like that because it's more organic, it's more natural. If you don't and you have to do a straight line, don't fuss. Just make the plant material to the front of those more interesting and more staggered. Make sure you put little clusters of different varieties of plant material in front of them to make that happen. We just happen to have the room here, so we did that. You know, so you can see when you're looking at this garden, there's a lot of this going on. High, high, low, the whole thing, and that's how it's gonna grow. And if you can do that right off the bat, your maintenance is way less than trying to kind of keep plants individual and separate them and, you know, work that way. But if you can do a big clustering of something big and then bring it back down with something like this, that's never going to compete ever with something like this. It's always going to be very controlled. Then now you don't even have to worry about that break. That break is just there. So you have that low line grouping here to offer that break. Then you come in with a sea of some crazy, like the blaze copperleaf. I love this variegation pop of color. It's probably one of the first things that you see when you come around the corner of this backyard. Then it's backed by the sea of Java white copperleaf. Now, we've got 9, 10 of the blaze copperleaf in here in this grouping, and I have a good 12 in the back with these Java whites. You know, it might be closer to 14. You can see how this is just a sea of these to the back, and that's kind of what I wanted. I wanted this whole area underneath this very old poinciana tree to really have kind of a big, like a finish point. This is a big finial in the garden, so I want this height to really, really happen. We're not getting the full view of what this is going to be in this garden because the Brazilian red cloaks to the back are a little slower grower than the other copperleaves. Copperleaves are going to be on the faster point, but they were worth it. And I told my clients it's going to be a little bit lopsided for a little while because I could not find Brazilian red cloaks any bigger when we planted them. So she knew she had to keep these a little bit more contained until those catch up. So we have a clustering of 6 Brazilian red cloaks in that rear corner back there. Again, they are staggered, so they will grow together. They're just starting to connect, but once they do, they will consume that whole wall. I'll get Bryce to pop up a picture of what they look like as a backdrop. So we are going to have hot pink back there. We're going to have the light tone and coloration of the Java whites here. Then we're going to have the darker coloration of the pink and the burgundies down below. And so this backyard's combination is yellow, pink, burgundy, orange, purple with the purple crepe myrtles coming in, watermelon pink from the pink crepe myrtles, and then the red tones and the orange tones of the other copperleaf and the orange from these awesome, beautiful pagodas. Oh my goodness, they're just starting to come in, and look how gorgeous they are. I don't know what offers such a tropical bloom like the pagodas. Now those come with a warning, you guys. Those will multiply. They will create more pagodas, so you have to definitely put them in an area where you can keep them controlled. So you see how the back is cleared out in this bed. There is just mulch, there's open areas. That way my clients can make sure to manage the pagodas where they want them. And I would not put them in like a sea of Java white copperleaves. I can put them in a controlled pattern next to things like this variegated arbicola. Hence why I do love this plant. This plant, this is our serene look. This is the opposite of the Java whites. This is more controlled. This gives us great contrast to this coloration. This is a perfect plant for that. And then we can keep this more hedge formal fitting, allowing us to have something wild and crazy to the back, because you don't want to mix too much of those two, especially when you have a plant that likes to propagate itself like the pagoda plant does. So these are going to fill in this area, but to a point. And then there's another clean species of a tree as a centerpiece with this purple crepe myrtle. Unfortunately, it's not in bloom yet, probably another month, but it's going to be stunning as this purple, orange, yellow, and green comes together on this side of the garden. All right, you guys, so I know we talked about plant groupings, plant combinations, things to definitely are gonna just work in your garden in Florida long term. But there is one thing that I did want to touch on. If you can, just to add a little bit of a difference in the garden, there are things that you can incorporate, like the fountain we mentioned, like a bird bath, but things like boulders. I love the look of a little boulder in the garden. It doesn't have to be anything big, it can be something like basketball size, but I love just little touches of a different element in the garden. If you can incorporate that, and you can incorporate them and some stone, that different element in a garden makes such an interesting place for your eye to rest. It's like, oh, there's more going on out there than I thought. I really do like the look of that. But I love the way this is inset, kind of at an angle. And you can play with that. Stick some dirt underneath of it to kind of make it fit your space, but you can incorporate them throughout the garden in key areas. So if you've got false agaves, if you've got king sagos, if you've got anything vertical like that, stick a couple of small boulders like this, pack some dirt in behind them so they're tilted up a little bit, making them look a little bit bigger than what they are. Play with it a little bit. Find out if you want it on an incline, find out if you kind of want it sitting more straightforward. So just a different element in the garden that really kind of plays with the space and gives it a little bit more personality. Just for reference, this is Tennessee fieldstone, and you can get them in a giant pallet and you can really kind of play with them throughout your garden. They go a long way when you get them that way. This is a triple basalt column from Aquascapes, and then this Alabama White River Rock. I like the way that this is bright against a dark mulch. I think that really makes a nice contrast. This is the 1.5" variety. This is what I use in landscape beds for the most part, or around water features. I do not use them in walkways because of the round rock, and as we know, round rock rolls. So I use more of the gray granites and the Tahitian gray granites for walkway pathways. But this is a great landscape rock for beds themselves because it does offer a nice bit of highlight in the garden. And then we just kind of did a nice aluminum alloy edging border around it to kind of keep it nice and controlled. You know, a year later, and you can see we're not bleeding to the mulch bed. It's kind of staying nice and compact. Edging is about 4.5 inches tall. It does a great job of keeping everything neat, but not, you know, overly visible. So if you want something more of an invisible edge line, the aluminum alloy edging is a good edging to work with in that particular situation. All right, you guys, so I just wanted to pop in here real quick and let you know that we are a landscape design and installation company. So we have an in-house installation team. If you're looking for more than just the inspiration that you're seeing here in the video and you just would like your project done for you, we do landscape design and installation through the Treasure and Space Coast. And then we also do landscape design only for those of you guys outside that area. And for those of you guys who don't need quite that much, you just need a little touch of this or touch of that, some advice on certain spots in your garden, then reach out to us for a virtual consult. And we hope to hear from you soon. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you spending the time with us. If you enjoyed today's tour, then you will enjoy our most recent video of 5 unique plants and trees in our garden. That was a fun one to shoot with some cool exotics. So thank you guys so much. Take care.